Have you ever wondered if the stories you've always heard about the early days of Christianity are incomplete? What if the authority of the apostles, the foundation of the church, was not as straightforward as we have been told? Imagine a hidden truth, preserved in obscure texts for centuries, revealing that one of the most influential figures in spiritual history, Mary Magdalene, was not merely a follower, but the true teacher of the apostles, entrusted with the deepest wisdom of Jesus. Could it be that history, as recorded and repeated, has obscured the role of a woman who held knowledge that could have reshaped the spiritual world? Some scholars, including Elaine Pagels, suggest that the Gnostic texts found in places like Nag Hammadi reveal a very different picture, one in which Mary Magdalene was a central figure, a guide in understanding the mystical teachings of Jesus. These revelations challenge centuries of conventional narratives and raise questions about why such truths were buried or dismissed. Were they deliberately hidden to protect a patriarchal interpretation of Christianity? Or was the wisdom considered too powerful, too transformative, to be shared with everyone? Throughout this video, we will explore these hidden texts, examining the symbols, the teachings, and the subtle but radical shifts in understanding that they reveal. By the end, you may find yourself questioning the foundation of what you thought you knew about the apostles and about spiritual authority itself. What does it mean for us today if the true teacher of the early church was a woman whose wisdom was almost erased from history? If you are fascinated by hidden revelations and the secrets of spiritual history, subscribe now and join a community of seekers dedicated to uncovering knowledge that has been hidden for centuries. For centuries, the story of Mary Magdalene has been overshadowed by the dominant narratives established by the early church. Traditional accounts largely portray her as a devoted follower of Jesus. Yet the Gnostic texts reveal a much deeper truth, one that suggests she was the most enlightened of his disciples, entrusted with teachings that the others struggled to grasp. The question emerges: why would the church allow such a crucial figure to be minimized, her role almost erased from history? Some scholars argue that the patriarchal structure of early Christianity may have deliberately downplayed her significance, suppressing the idea that a woman could hold spiritual authority equal to or greater than that of the apostles themselves. Elaine Pagels and other researchers point to writings such as the Gospel of Mary, a Gnostic text discovered in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, which depicts Mary as a teacher, providing guidance to the male disciples who were confused and struggling to understand the deeper lessons of Jesus. In one passage, Peter questions her authority, and yet the text shows that Mary possesses insight that even the other apostles do not fully comprehend. This illustrates a spiritual hierarchy based not on social or institutional power, but on the capacity to understand and embody divine knowledge gnosis itself. Symbols and teachings in these texts are rich and deliberate. When Mary speaks of visions and inner revelations, these are not mere stories. They point to a process of spiritual awakening that transcends conventional understanding. The Gnostics saw this as evidence that the divine can manifest in unexpected ways, often through those whom society overlooks or diminishes. The suppression of Mary's role reflects a broader pattern. Spiritual truths that challenge authority, especially truths that elevate the feminine aspect of the divine, were often concealed, hidden in texts that only a few could access or comprehend. For the viewer today, this raises profound questions. How many figures in spiritual history have been misrepresented or minimized because their authority threatened the status quo? What might your understanding of faith look like if you approached it with the awareness that hidden wisdom has always existed, quietly preserved, waiting to be discovered by those willing to look deeper? By exploring Mary Magdalene's role through these Gnostic texts, we begin to see the early Christian world not as a monolithic institution, but as a dynamic environment, where hidden teachings were accessible only to the prepared, a secret spiritual lineage that carried knowledge meant to awaken insight, not obedience. As we continue, we will delve further into the specific teachings Mary Magdalene imparted, the symbolism embedded in the texts, and the turning point that reveals her as the central conduit of Jesus' hidden wisdom. The revelations are subtle but transformative, reshaping how we view the origins of spiritual authority and the true path to Gnosis. The Gospel of Mary, along with other Gnostic texts, presents Mary Magdalene not as a passive follower, but as a teacher endowed with profound spiritual insight. In these writings, she explains visions of the soul, the obstacles that prevent awakening, and the path to true knowledge, the gnosis that allows one to perceive the divine directly, beyond ritual or hierarchy. Some scholars interpret these passages as radical because they invert the expected power dynamics. It is not Peter or the other apostles who possess full understanding, but Mary, who guides them through doubt, fear, and confusion. The teachings she imparts focus on inner transformation, liberation from ignorance, and the recognition of the divine spark within every individual, a hallmark of Gnostic philosophy. The symbols embedded in Mary's instructions are equally revealing. When she speaks of ascent, light, and the overcoming of archons, the invisible forces that obscure spiritual truth, she is describing an internal process that transforms perception and consciousness. For the Gnostics, archons were not merely mythic figures. They were metaphors for societal, institutional, and psychological forces that shape our understanding of reality, often limiting awareness of deeper truths. Mary's role was to illuminate the path through these barriers, guiding disciples toward direct experience of the divine. In this light, her teachings are less about historical narrative and more about awakening consciousness, a process that resonates with anyone seeking spiritual clarity today. Why then was this wisdom systematically minimized? The historical record suggests that the early church, seeking to establish orthodoxy, may have regarded Mary's authority as threatening. A woman positioned as the primary interpreter of Jesus' hidden teachings disrupted the patriarchal framework that sought to centralize control and define spiritual legitimacy through male leadership. By sidelining Mary and framing her as a mere follower, the institutional church not only reshaped history, but also ensured that the transformative potential of her insights remained largely inaccessible to the faithful. Some Gnostic scholars argue that this erasure was not merely about gender, but about safeguarding knowledge that empowered individuals to seek divine understanding independently, outside of rigid hierarchies. For the modern seeker, these revelations are deeply resonant. They challenge assumptions about spiritual authority, urging reflection on how truth is preserved, distorted, or hidden over time. If Mary Magdalene, the one who understood Jesus most profoundly, was obscured by history, what other teachings might have been similarly concealed? How do these hidden truths invite you to reconsider the sources of your own spiritual understanding? The text suggests that spiritual awakening is not granted by titles, institutions, or social approval, but through direct engagement with the divine, guided by wisdom that often lies in unexpected hands. Furthermore, the Gospel of Mary emphasizes inner resilience and discernment, showing that doubt and confusion are natural stages on the path to understanding. The apostles' struggle to grasp her teachings mirrors the modern seeker's challenge, confronting inherited beliefs, questioning authority, and recognizing that true insight is earned through reflection, courage, and openness. Each symbol and passage becomes a mirror for personal transformation, inviting the viewer to experience the same awakening that Mary offered to her contemporaries. The profound lesson is clear. Spiritual authority lies not in position, but in the capacity to awaken consciousness, to navigate unseen forces, and to illuminate the path for others willing to seek deeper truth. As we move forward, we will explore the forces that distorted these teachings, the critical turning points in history that suppressed Mary's role, and how her rediscovered wisdom can profoundly influence spiritual practice today. The journey reveals a layered truth, one that continues to challenge conventional perceptions of faith, power, and divine guidance. Mary Magdalene's wisdom did not remain unnoticed, but it faced relentless forces determined to control the narrative of early Christianity. The patriarchal structures of the early church, seeking to consolidate authority, often reframed or suppressed teachings that challenged hierarchical dominance. Mary's role as the central transmitter of Jesus' hidden knowledge posed a threat. If the faithful recognized that spiritual insight could come from a woman, and that enlightenment required personal engagement rather than institutional mediation, the Church's control over doctrine and interpretation could be undermined. Some scholars argue that this suppression was subtle yet deliberate, shaping centuries of spiritual understanding and minimizing her contributions in canonical texts. The rediscovery of these Gnostic writings marked a pivotal turning point, shining light on the forgotten voices of early Christianity. Scholars like Elaine Pagels dedicated years to studying the Nag Hammadi texts and the Gospel of Mary, revealing a spiritual landscape far more complex than previously acknowledged. In these writings, Mary emerges as a teacher guiding the apostles through uncertainty, fear, and doubt, demonstrating that true spiritual authority lies not in position, but in insight, discernment, and intimate knowledge of the divine. The text even portrays moments of tension between Mary and the apostles, highlighting that enlightenment is earned, not inherited. Such passages reveal the radical nature of her teachings and the disruptive power of hidden knowledge that had the potential to transform spiritual perception entirely. Symbols within the texts offer additional layers of insight. When Mary speaks of ascending beyond earthly constraints, of perceiving light hidden within darkness, or of overcoming the archons that obscure understanding, she is describing the inner journey of the seeker. The archons, in Gnostic terms, represent both internal and external forces that distort perception, whether social, institutional, or psychological. Mary's guidance shows how to navigate these obstacles, offering practical yet mystical instruction on cultivating awareness and awakening the divine spark within. It is a lesson in empowerment, encouraging seekers to claim insight directly rather than relying on intermediaries. The consequences of these distortions resonate even today. Modern faith often emphasizes obedience to external authority, ritualistic practice, or inherited interpretation. Mary's suppressed role invites reflection. What knowledge might still be hidden within spiritual traditions? How might your understanding of faith change if you embrace a model of authority grounded in personal gnosis and direct experience? Her teachings encourage questioning inherited assumptions and recognizing that the path to enlightenment may diverge from the familiar, institutionalized frameworks that have dominated for centuries. This turning point, where hidden texts re-emerge into public awareness, demonstrates a broader principle. Spiritual truth has always been preserved, often through secrecy, and only becomes accessible when seekers are prepared to receive it. Mary Magdalene's wisdom challenges us to reevaluate our understanding of early Christianity, revealing that enlightenment is not a privilege of a few, but a potential available to anyone willing to seek, reflect, and awaken. By examining the historical forces that distorted her role, we gain insight into how spiritual authority can be hidden, suppressed, and ultimately rediscovered, offering lessons that remain profoundly relevant to our lives today. The rediscovered teachings of Mary Magdalene are not merely historical curiosities. They are living guides for anyone willing to explore the depths of spiritual awareness. The Gospel of Mary portrays her as a master of hidden wisdom, illuminating truths that the apostles themselves struggled to comprehend. In doing so, she embodies the Gnostic principle that divine knowledge gnosis is not conferred by status or institution, but earned through inner exploration and personal experience. Her guidance emphasizes that awakening is an active process, a journey of self-discovery, discernment, and courage to confront forces that obscure understanding, whether these forces are societal, institutional, or internal. Symbols in her teachings: light within darkness, the ascent of the soul, the overcoming of archons, are not abstract or mystical simply for the sake of mystery. They point to the inner processes of transformation, showing that spiritual liberation is achieved by recognizing and transcending limitations imposed by tradition, fear, or ignorance. When Mary instructs the apostles, she models the transformative power of insight. understanding that spiritual authority is not a position to claim, but a state to embody. This challenges the viewer to reflect on their own life. Which beliefs have been inherited unquestioningly? Which truths remain obscured? And how might engaging with hidden wisdom awaken deeper awareness and purpose? Her teachings also highlight the balance between concealment and revelation. The wisdom Mary imparted was carefully preserved, sometimes hidden, to ensure that it reached those prepared to understand it. This principle is timeless. Profound spiritual truths are not always accessible on the surface. They require readiness, focus, and intention. By confronting these hidden layers, the viewer is invited to step beyond passive belief, to awaken the divine spark within, and to engage directly with the transformative knowledge that has survived despite centuries of suppression. Each symbol, each insight, becomes a tool for navigating the unseen dimensions of reality and reclaiming personal authority in spiritual life. Consider how radical this is. A woman, almost erased from history, preserved the keys to enlightenment that the apostles themselves struggled to grasp. What does this say about the potential for hidden wisdom in your own life? How might your perception of faith, authority, and personal empowerment shift if you embrace the notion that understanding the divine is a personal journey, not a passive inheritance? Mary Magdalene's teachings invite a profound reflection. The path to gnosis is available to anyone willing to seek, question, and awaken, transcending the limitations imposed by centuries of distortion. Ask yourself now, are you ready to challenge the narratives you have accepted for decades? Will you allow yourself to explore the hidden teachings, to engage with knowledge that was preserved quietly for those who dared to seek it? By doing so, you step into a lineage of seekers who have, across centuries, risked certainty and comfort to access the profound truths of spiritual life. The awakening that Mary Magdalene offers is not abstract, it is practical, transformative, and deeply personal, providing guidance for understanding your own path, discerning hidden forces, and awakening the divine presence within. Each revelation, each insight is an invitation to reclaim what has been hidden, to honor the wisdom preserved across time, and to begin your own journey towards spiritual illumination. The journey we've taken through the hidden teachings of Mary Magdalene reveals a truth that challenges everything we thought we knew about spiritual authority and the foundations of early Christianity. Far from being a passive follower, Mary emerges as the teacher entrusted with the deepest wisdom of Jesus, guiding the apostles through confusion, doubt, and the unseen forces that obscure understanding. Her story, once suppressed and almost erased, now serves as a beacon, showing that divine knowledge is not confined to institutions, titles, or tradition. It is alive within each seeker who dares to engage, question, and awaken. Reflect on what this means for your own life. How often have we accepted inherited beliefs without questioning them? How many layers of understanding remain hidden because we never pause to look deeper? The Gnostic perspective, as illuminated by Mary Magdalene's teachings, reminds us that awakening is a personal journey. It is cultivated through reflection, discernment, and courage to confront the unseen obstacles, internal and external, that prevent us from perceiving the divine spark within ourselves. Her wisdom invites us to reclaim authority over our own spiritual path and to embrace the knowledge that has been quietly preserved for those willing to seek it. By commenting below, sharing your reflections, and joining the conversation, you help keep these hidden revelations alive. Liking and subscribing is not just an action. It is a commitment to the pursuit of truth, a declaration that you are part of a community of seekers who honor the wisdom that history tried to conceal. Your participation becomes a living extension of this lineage, ensuring that knowledge, insight, and gnosis continue to inspire and awaken others who are ready to explore deeper dimensions of spiritual understanding. Even as this video concludes, the journey does not end here. The hidden teachings of Mary Magdalene are a reminder that the search for truth is ongoing, that history preserves more than we realize, and that every seeker has the opportunity to awaken the divine within. Ask yourself, what other truths remain concealed? quietly shaping our understanding of faith, power, and spiritual authority. How far are you willing to go to uncover the layers of wisdom that have been hidden for centuries? The message is clear. Awakening is not passive. It requires curiosity, courage, and engagement. Mary Magdalene's teachings call on each of us to participate in the process, to honor those who preserve these truths, and to become active seekers in our own right. The hidden gospel she carried, once secret and suppressed, now invites you to step forward, reflect, and embrace the transformative potential of Gnosis. What will you discover when you allow yourself to look beyond inherited narratives and encounter the divine directly within your own consciousness? The search for truth continues, and you have the opportunity to join it, fully awake and fully aware.